Hello, Yurten, and welcome to this lesson. Just before we get started, I want you to know that we're starting a new topic all about Stalin's purges. We're still in the 1930s, so the same period as his economic policies, rapid industrialization and collectivization, but are now going to think about how he really increased his power and control over the country. We're learning specifically about why. So why did he purge the Soviet Union of opposition with such bloody and violent methods? And we're going to look at the reasons for that. And you can see in the yellow box there, if you're successful, you should be able to describe the key features of Kirov's murder. So there'll be a specific event that you'll need to become an expert on, but also can you explain the reasons for these purges, including his personality, the economic reasons, and Lenin's legacy. As a starter task, the first thing I'd like to do is look at these photographs and have a think what is happening in these images. They're all the same image, but you can see that there's something different that's happening. And secondly, what can we learn from this about Stalin? So pause the video, write down some ideas, and then come back when you're ready to share them. Okay, so hopefully you've written down some things like Stalin removed people from these photographs, but also was making himself look friendlier and more welcoming. If you had anything else, please share it in the Microsoft Teams. It'd be really interesting to hear. Why would he do this? Well, this photograph shows Stalin with a number of key leaders from the 1920s and 1930s. Maybe one reason is that he wanted to make himself seem more powerful, that he wasn't making decisions with other people, that they weren't important, he was doing all of this on his own. Another possible reason is that he wanted to eradicate certain people from history, people who had opposed him. He didn't just want to show that they were wrong, but he actually wanted to remove all memory of them. So one thing that Stalin was doing was actually editing photographs and getting rid of people that had disagreed with him. And the interesting question is why? And probably one answer to that is his methods. If he'd simply removed them from the party, then he wouldn't have too much to hide. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of people were murdered, sent into exile, or worked to death as a result of Stalin's purges. In fact, some historians think 8 million people died in the 1930s because of his purges. Therefore, he was also trying to rewrite history by showing a more positive image of himself and removing the memory of these people. If you're going to be successful in today's lesson, you're going to need to use these keywords. Purge means to get rid of anything that's undesirable. An opponent is fairly obvious, someone who disagrees with you. Leningrad doesn't exist today, it's changed its name to St. Petersburg, but it's the second city of Russia. It was very important during the Russian Revolution, and therefore, if you were the head of the Communist Party in Leningrad, it was actually a very important position, which is where you'll find out about Kirov. A scapegoat is anyone who has been used as an excuse for why something went wrong or why it failed. A wrecker was Stalin's word to describe someone who wasn't actually supporting the revolution. For example, they weren't going with Stalin's new economic policies. The December law you won't hear too much about today in your lesson or in the textbook, but I think it's important that you should be aware when Kirov was murdered in 1934 in December, a new law was passed by Stalin, and it basically meant he could accuse anyone, arrest anyone, and even execute anyone that he accused of being involved with this particular murder or any other crime against the government. Lastly, we're going to be talking about terror in general. It's a word that's used a lot with Stalin. It's about using violence to control the broader population. It might actually mean arresting, exiling, or even executing people so that the wider population will also do what you want through fear. Okay, we're in our distance learning period and I can't be within the class, but I would like to give you one big idea for today's lesson. Despite the fact that Stalin was the undisputed leader of the Communist Party by the 1920s, he did face some criticism and opposition within the party in the early 1930s. In particular, that was a result of his disastrous policy of collectivization that we've just been learning about, which had led to famine and the death of millions, as well as the suffering in the towns and the cities in particular as a result of rapid industrialization, when working and living conditions made life really, really difficult. Now, in 1934, a man called Sergei Kirov, who you'll find out about, was murdered, but it led to a wider spread purge that killed, we think, up to 8 million people. It started in the party, but Stalin then spread that into the army, the military, and even to the broader population. So there you have it. The big idea for today's lesson is the fact that Kirov's murder wasn't just removing one person from the party, it actually led to a huge widespread purge across eventually the whole country. So that's why we're looking at this significant event. You'll have to understand why did it actually happen, what happened, and the consequences of it. Just to give you some context, the purges were organized originally by one of Stalin's very close friends, Yezhov. However, by the end of the 1930s, even he himself had suffered the fate of many others. He was replaced by Stalin, arrested, and very quickly executed. He was then also removed from photographs, as you can see here, when Stalin and Yezhov were walking by one of the achievements of the industrialization period, the Moscow Canal. So what do you need to do in today's lesson? Well, in simple terms, there are two videos after this one at the start of the assignment. Watch them both. One gives a definition of purges, and the other one will tell you a bit more about Kirov's murder. You should then complete all the questions on the Microsoft assignment. And I've got a little challenge question for you as well. Can you find out what happened to the people who had opposed Stalin in the 1920s? For example, Bukharin, Kamenev, Zinoviev, and Trotsky. If you can, you're doing really well, you're getting ahead of us. Put that into the class's Teams chat and I'll see if you've done well. You can use the following questions to review how well you've done this lesson. So for example, if you're working for a level 4 or 5, you should be able to describe what happened to Kirov with some detail about his murder, and you should be able to list other reasons why Stalin wanted to remove other opposition. For example, Lenin had done it, he had a secret police called the Cheka, and that's one reason why Stalin justified using violence as well. If you're aiming for a higher level, you really should be looking to describe two key features of Kirov's murder in detail. So for example, 3 clear facts about the causes and 3 clear facts about the consequences. One of those consequences might be the December law that was passed that gave Stalin the power to then arrest and execute anyone he accused of not supporting him or the revolution. Explain 2 of the reasons for Stalin's purges in good detail as well. So we're not just listing the reasons, but we're also showing our knowledge. Lastly, if you're aiming for the very highest grades in history, for this topic, you should be able to evaluate which was the most important reason, in your opinion, for Kirov's murder. Was it economic reasons, personality, or Lenin's legacy? So if you've got any questions about the lesson, then please use the lesson time that we've got and Microsoft Teams to ask questions in the chat function. The last thing I'll leave with you is just a reminder that this is the assessment criteria that we're working towards for this part of the course. So just have a look at the highest mark bands, because these are the types of descriptors that you should be aspiring to in terms of the knowledge and understanding that you've got. Good luck.